This week on What Was Proto Stan Doing During Class Instead of Paying Attention, we have... Alright, I can work with that. The Dark Knight and the Man of Steel are the world's finest superheroes in the DC universe. What happens when you get them together? Well, you get the 2003 Superman/Batman book. Real creative title on that one, DC, but I promise, the actual book is better than the name. The series was a monthly comic book featuring team-ups of Superman and Batman and included dual narration between the two main characters. It was meant to rekindle the friendship between Clark and Bruce that was lost ever since the original World's Finest comic team book that ended back in 1986. This version of the concept, now written by Jeff Loeb, known for his work on Batman Hush and Superman Emperor Joker, is meant to act as a way to have the Super and Bat parts of the DC universe cross over without having to have some huge crisis event take place. The book was also meant to clean up a couple of narrative messes. This cleanup is seen in the first arc of the book, Public Enemies, which is made to be an end to the President Luthor plotline from the 90s. TLDR version, Lex Luthor becomes president and does a lot to make life a living hell for our heroes. This reaches its peak when a giant kryptonite meteor begins heading for Earth and threatens to destroy the planet. Because Lex is a dick, he shafts the blame on Superman and puts a bounty of $1 billion on his head. Now it's up to Bruce and Clark to destroy the asteroid and stop Luthor. This storyline is great. Ed McGuinness's pencils give all the characters a bold look to them. One that is stylized, but not too cartoony where it contrasts the tone. And the colors by Dave Stewart make the world seem vibrant and alive, no matter the setting. The writing and artwork work so well together here. Almost every page and line of dialogue creates some kind of parallel between Superman and Batman. The opening pages being a recap of the duo's backstories happening simultaneously is a great example of that. Another is this beautiful double-page spread we see in issue 4 where our heroes fight off Luthor's government goon squad. This opening arc is about 6 issues and the entire story looks as good as this. Unfortunately, there are some notable, average comic book hiccups here and there. The plot is largely balanced towards Superman, with Batman mostly being there for moral support. And they attempt to avoid this in issue 1 by introducing a subplot about whether or not the supervillain Metallo killed the Waynes, but it never gets resolved, at least not in this series anyways. Some characters also feel a little wasted. The Bat and Super families both kind of just show up to get jobbed by Lex and say they made an appearance. Some heroes also act a little out of character. The series doesn't really justify why Starfire and Green Lantern are working for Luthor, or why Bruce is just cool and supportive of the idea of Clark killing Luthor, but those moments are few and far between. This is also the only comic where Hawkman looks cool, and I don't know how to feel about that. But truthfully, I don't have much to say about this arc, besides read it yourself. This is Superman and Batman at their peak. It doesn't get much better than this. But I can't say the same for the next arc though. But before arc 2, we have to make a pit stop in issue 7, which is the Superboy and Robin story. It's neat, it has giant robots and cleans up the Metallo part of arc 1, but not much else. If you want a real Connor and Tim story, go read World's Finest 3, which is about their first real team up, or Young Justice. Everyone can use a little bit more Young Justice in their lives. But for realsies now, in Arc 2 we have the Supergirl from Krypton. This story sees Batman finding a Kryptonian space pod in the debris of the kryptonite meteor they blew up all the way back in issue 6, which houses Kara Jor-El, the Supergirl, aka Superman's cousin.
Do it! That's not funny. That's not...
But even characters like Connor Kent Superboy or Sorel Supergirl were only part Kryptonian and weren't even from Krypton, so they didn't technically count. This arc changes that and brings Supergirl back into the main DC continuity, and honestly kinda fumbles that. This arc suffers all of the same issues of the first arc and more, which is unfortunate. The content of the arc is fine in concept, but most of it's lacking in execution. For example, the idea of Wonder Woman training Kara and Themyscira is pretty cool, but it comes with the hard caveat that it requires Wonder Woman being a psycho and borderline kidnapping her just so issue 8 can have a cool looking cliffhanger. This arc also makes a big deal of Kara making friends on Themyscira, but we only get to see one of them, and she dies in the very same issue and is never brought up again. And not to mention the travesty that is Kara falling under Darkseid's mind control. How did Darkseid break Kara's will in what was a matter of days and get her to fully believe in his cause? Who knows, cause I sure don't. Not to mention this garbage outfit Kara gets when she's evil. Who put her in that? But this arc definitely feels like it had stuff cut for time. It probably could have used a minimum of 2 more issues to flesh out the concepts it introduced, which is unfortunate for what is Kara's reintroduction into the main DC universe. It doesn't help that the art isn't great. I'm not a huge fan of Michael Turner's work. It's serviceable, but can be pure fan service in the worst possible ways, which is honestly the best way to describe this arc. There are 2 raw Superman and Batman moments in it, so I'd be lying if I said there was nothing of worth here. Also, after this arc, I read Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Trinity, largely because it details the first meeting of the Big 2 meeting Wonder Woman and becoming the Big 3 in this continuity, but it's kind of bad. It's mostly a Batman story that just happens to feature Wonder Woman and Superman. It did give us this insane cameo though. Something I should note is that the first 2 arcs got full movie adaptations, but this next arc is mostly comics, with a hard sort of. It sort of got an adaptation, but like in a very roundabout way that might just be coincidental. This next arc is called Absolute Power, and it features a trio of villains from the 31st century who kidnap Batman and Superman from their origin stories and raise them, as Green Arrow put it, into the Hitler twins. If I had a nickel for how many times an evil Superman killed Green Arrow, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't much, but it's weird it happened twice. Truthfully, there isn't much to this arc. It's mostly time travel shenanigans and a lot of alternate universe stuff, which is fun, but not much substance to it. Doesn't help that a lot of its events are forgotten by both the characters, except for Darkseid, because Darkseid never forgets. It's mostly set up to the arc right after it, but it's still pretty neat all the same. But I felt the need to talk about it because the 2 big elements of this plot, Superman becoming a dictator and Batman stopping his own origin story, get adapted in very roundabout ways later on. Superman is obviously in stuff like Injustice or the Justice Lord's plot of the Justice League cartoon, but the Batman part is interesting because Barry Allen basically stole the entire bit for Flashpoint, which is a story that features Flash going back in time and stopping his own origin story. And it's probably the most famous Flash story now, for better and for worse. So I personally, if I wrote Absolute Power and found out Flashpoint dropped not too long after, I'd be hot. Extremely upset actually. But honestly, that's besides the point. I think this arc is pretty cool, but it is a big what if, so outside of some consequences later on, it really isn't much. Although for a what if about what would happen if Superman was raised into Hitler, it is kind of weird that like Supergirl just isn't in it at all, despite the fact by all means she should still be here. That would have been a perfect layup of, oh yeah, that's the same and she's the main character of this arc, but I guess not. I don't know, I guess they just weren't feeling her that time. But before I get to our final story, we have issue 19, which is another Supergirl adventure, only this time it's not ass, but I'm going to skip it. Not because it's bad, it's pretty one note and kind of just goes over what her first arc is, but it's still worth a read all the same. I still like it. It's just not really worth going over for this video. And for our final arc, we have Back with a Vengeance. Here we see Superman and Batman first attacked by a kryptonite man who is revealed to be a possessed Captain Atom, and then they are attacked by a group of superheroes from another world called the Maximums. All of this is happening, Bizarro has not teamed up with his worst friend, Bat-Zarro, a perfect copy of Batman who kills couples leaving the movie so he cannot solve the death of the Waynes. This arc is very similar to Public Enemies, where I don't have much to say about it, but that's just because it's really good. The art is just as amazing as before, and it definitely feels like a strong send-off to Jeff Loeb's tenure as main writer, because after this he leaves and it's all downhill from here. And there's so much fan service here, it's not even funny. Stuff like the Maximums being just off-brand versions of Marvel characters going toe-to-toe with Batman and Superman, Bizarro recruiting a bunch of different versions of Supergirl up to this point to free Superman from the source wall, all of the Batman and Superman through DC history being brought together for the final battle in a circus of death. Man, it's solid. It also brings back Batmite, and I'm always happy to see more Batmite. Although I might be biased because this arc is a stealth sequel to Emperor Joker, which is great and functionally just a prototype to this series, so you should go read that too. My only issue with the arc is that when Superman and Batman do get their backup, there's basically no Batman representation. None of his partners or sidekicks making an appearance. And while it is cool seeing the Batman and the Superman of the multiverse brought together for this, I think I would have preferred if they just stuck to the counterparts they had introduced, like Beyond and Red Sun Superman. Even the gender-bent heroes Batman goes to for help, they don't really do much in the endgame. They just get him a ticket to the Circus of Death. The story also misses an opportunity to clean up some plot elements from Emperor Joker that never really got finished up, but that's more of a problem with Emperor Joker and less this storyline. This one also has some storyline stuff that never gets cleaned up, but that'll be dealt with later. Despite the fact that Batman and Superman do fight Avengers knockoffs, it is disappointing that they don't make any mention of JLA/Avengers in this, which is canon and both characters do remember the events of. This is still really good though. Despite any of those gripes, those are more like what could have been than actual issues with the arc. Although I did lie a little bit. The real final issue that Loeb worked on was issue 26, but I won't be covering that because the main story has super heavy spoilers for the Teen Titans run at the time, and the backup story contains some pretty serious material and topics I don't feel comfortable covering on a video like this. I still suggest reading them all the same, just be prepared for some heavy stuff. Next time I do something like this, I'm going to try and cover the 2013 World's Finest run, or the current World's Finest run, which was really good, unlike the New 52 one, which is, I remember being alright. Has the Batman and Laugh in it, so how bad can it be?